Hello there. Today we are kind of continuing with the list of the Modern Library's greatest 100 novels of the 20th century with Kurt Vonnegut's, where is he? Number 18 on the list, Slaughterhouse-Five. What shall we say about Slaughterhouse-Five and Kurt Vonnegut? Well, let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with the plot description. Slaughterhouse-Five is the story of Billy Pilgrim. Billy Pilgrim was a soldier, an American soldier in the Second World War. A husband, he was a father, he was an optometrist, he was a very, let's say that severely underqualified American soldier, and he was an alien abductee. And the novel is told in a fragmented manner so that we get a little bit of Billy Pilgrim's life when he was studying to become an optometrist. And we get a little bit of his life during the Second World War when his life was pure hell. And then we get a little bit of his life when he is on the planet Tralfamadore, and the creatures that live there are the Tralfamadorians. And very interestingly, the first chapter of the novel is a very extended introduction to Kurt Vonnegut explaining to the reader how it is that he came to write this novel, because Kurt Vonnegut was an American soldier at the same time as his main character, Billy Pilgrim, was in the same locations, and in this narrative, Kurt Vonnegut appears, himself the author, as a character a little bit off to the side of Billy Pilgrim, the main hero, if we can call him as such. And that's it. That's the plot, that it jumps back and forth between the events of Billy Pilgrim's life. I suppose you might say that the main event in the novel is this firebombing of Dresden, Germany. Kurt Vonnegut really wanted to give a lot of weight to this, because he makes the point that a lot of historical memory goes towards the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But for some reason, we are quite historically absent-minded when it comes to the bombing of Dresden. And Kurt Vonnegut was there, and he wants to highlight this as an American atrocity. So we have that introduction where Kurt Vonnegut is wrestling with this idea of this novel. He doesn't want to make it a glorious American hooray for us war novel. Oh, look, we won the Second World War, even though we came in quite late compared to everyone else. Sorry. And that's it. That's the plot. You know, Billy Pilgrim he's flung back and forth between these different eras in his life. I think that's all that I can tell you about the plot, reasonably, without getting into too much particular detail. Now, what does this say about this character? Has he lost his mind? Like, has his brain gone off to Fantasyland because he cannot deal with the horrors that he is witnessing in war? There is a very strong argument for that. I would say, yeah, probably yes. You could reasonably make the argument, because like the whole alien plot of being taken away as an abductee to this planet millions and millions of light years away. They put him into a zoo as a human chimpanzee, and all of the creatures from this planet, they come and they look at him to observe the human being. But he also learns about them and about how they see the universe. Has Billy Pilgrim lost his mind? It's difficult to say, because the way the story is told is quite, as I said, it's very fragmented. We get a little piece here, we get a little piece there. And there's one scene in the novel where he is in a hospital and he is reading a lot of science fiction novels by Kurt Vonnegut's favorite character, Kilgore Trout. Because he's in the hospital and the bed next to him is another one of Kurt Vonnegut's favorite characters, Mr. Rosewater. I think it's Elliot Rosewater. And Elliot Rosewater has a massive collection of Kilgore Trout novels because he's a huge fan, and he's lending them to Billy Pilgrim. See, I can't quite place in Billy Pilgrim's history if he's reading these novels before he went to the war or after he went to the war, because at one point he's involved in a plane crash. I think it's after. It's after the war, because something about the plane crash makes Billy Pilgrim want to go to New York City and get on a radio station and tell everyone about the Tralfamadorians and how they see the world and the universe. And he wants to explain to them the way they see the world is much better than the way human beings see the world. Please don't allow my very back and forth explanation to make you think it's a very complicated novel. It's a very simple novel. You can read it extremely quickly. It's very fun. It's very lighthearted. Kurt Vonnegut was a very interesting man. He really had quite a beautiful perspective on the world. There was quite a large degree of fatalism in Kurt Vonnegut's philosophy. I would say that, he was quite resigned to the horrors of the world, but at the same time, he really believed in love and human goodness and empathy towards other people. And you could see that, like his philosophy and his ideas about humanity, they just come out in all of his pages. You can feel Vonnegut's hopeful, tentative optimism about the human race, that we can be good. We're not very often good, but we can be. And when we are good, that is a wonderful thing to experience, human goodness. And it's a shame that it is so uncommon. That is primarily the feeling I get about Kurt Vonnegut's take on humanity. I should say that there was a period of my life, I think I was 20 years old, and from 20 to 22, I read everything that Kurt Vonnegut wrote. I read all of it. And the thing about Vonnegut is that he started his career as straight science fiction writer. His first novel was called Player Piano, 1952, and I enjoyed that. I read that 2 times. And as he progressed through the years, he became more of a, what we might say, a literary novelist. However, he never abandoned his science fiction origins as a writer. Like, a lot of his later novels had quite a science fiction element to them, especially Breakfast of Champions. 1952, Player Piano. 1959, The Sirens of Titan. I read that once, and I have always felt I should go back and read that one again. But then 1960, we got to what I consider to be Kurt Vonnegut really honing in on his craft as a literary novelist. We got Cat's Cradle, and that is a brilliant novel to read. Read Cat's Cradle, it's fantastic. 1969, we got Slaughterhouse-Five. Slaughterhouse-Five was banned, and it was banned because, as I do believe, it was the first novel, cover your ears, ever to have the word motherfucker printed in English in an American novel. And it was banned because of that word. But then people got over it. I would say that the highlights of Kurt Vonnegut's career, I would say Cat's Cradle #1, Breakfast of Champions #2, and Slaughterhouse-Five #3. Even though this is on the list of the 100 greatest novels, I think Cat's Cradle is better. This novel, all right, let me say something. If you're a teenager, I don't know why you would be watching this, but let's just imagine that I have a big teenage following, or you're in your early 20s, Kurt Vonnegut is a wonderful author to discover, and there's nothing wrong with reading everything that he ever published. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater is a lot of fun. Dead-Eye Dick is a lot of fun. Hocus Pocus, I can't remember. I know that I've read it, but is that the one about the president and something weird, like the gravity of Earth is alternating like the weather? Well, some days the gravity is very heavy, some days it's very light. Vonnegut is a wonderful author to discover. His writing is so light and playful and witty, but I'm not young. I'm 50 years old, and I have to say that I wish that I had not read this novel again, because I found it extremely annoying. Every time someone dies, or something dies, an animal, he always writes, "So it goes." How many times is it written in this novel, "So it goes"? It must be over 100 times he writes this phrase. The dog died, so it goes. These men were slaughtered when they were at the battle of such and such, so it goes. And it's tedious. It's like an old man who keeps repeating the same punchline over and over again, not realizing that it's no longer funny, and it is, in fact, quite annoying, and it really got on my nerves. This is the complaint I have about Vonnegut, is that sometimes he's a little bit too cute for my tastes. I like the heavy, highbrow literature. I like the deep psychological examinations. I like the very carefully crafted characters and scenarios. I love that stuff. When I was young, I really enjoyed the cute stuff. It was fun. It was like, wow, I didn't realize a writer could write in a style so irreverently. And now I guess I'm just over that. You can write in that cute style, but not the novels that I want to read. So if I had not read this novel very recently, I would have told you that I love it and I recommend it to everyone, but I have just read it recently for school, and I would say if you don't read it when you're young, you're really not going to enjoy it very much when you get older. I think 30 years old, it's not going to be that much fun to read. It's going to be too annoying, those repetitive phrases, too cute. Now, I think what Vonnegut is doing is noble. He's trying to draw attention to this Dresden firebombing, which he feels was such a very significant event. And yes, that is laudable, because if he had not written about that event, I don't think I would have ever heard of that event. I think that I have been completely unaware of that, the Dresden bombing, aside from this novel. Maybe it's my own poor education, but I don't know. Would I recommend to you read it? Well, are you 25 or younger? Read Slaughterhouse-Five. Are you 26 or older? It can be something you read on the bus. It can be something you read on an airplane. If you're really a very serious, deeply entrenched literature lover, as I consider myself to be, it was just a bit too light and fluffy for my taste these days. Even though there's a lot of violence, even though there's tension, there's human drama, the style in which it is written is a bit too playful for me. I still would like to go back and read The Sirens of Titan, because I think that's just straightforward science fiction with Kurt Vonnegut making commentary about the world. And I think that's what science fiction is good at doing, is providing this landscape, futuristic or alien or whatever it is, science fiction, to make commentaries about the world we live in today. Kurt Vonnegut gave these famous lectures about tracing the plot lines of a story on a graph. And I know that because I went to see Kurt Vonnegut give a lecture in 1993 in Toronto. And it was one of the happiest experiences in my life to see this author who I idolized at the time standing there. He was quite an old man, giving this lecture, and the joy that he was giving, because he was such a kind-hearted person. He took a break, to have a cigarette. He was a lifelong smoker. And this professor didn't mention any of those things. He didn't mention that in Slaughterhouse-Five, we have two of Kurt Vonnegut's characters who appear in several of his other novels. We have Kilgore Trout. All right, this is Kurt Vonnegut's favorite reoccurring character. Kilgore Trout is the science fiction writer who never made any money, but he produced hundreds and hundreds of novels. And he is the main character of Breakfast of Champions. Elliot Rosewater, he is the main character of his own novel, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. Kurt Vonnegut was such an interesting man. He was the soldier, and then he had a son, Mark Vonnegut, who he also wrote a book because, he went nuts. He had to go to an asylum to get fixed up. I read Mark Vonnegut's novel as well, and I remember it was good, but a little bit scary, but just like how somebody lost their mind. Thank you very much for watching. This is Grant Loves Books. I do love books, although I do not enjoy university. And that is where I will finish with the video today.